Hi everyone, it's Lindsay and I am back today with the second video in my Card Making 101 series. Today I'm going to be covering the types of stamps, and in this video I will be using stamps from the same company, and that is Stampin' Up! The reason I am using all of the stamps from Stampin' Up! Is because they carry wood mount, cling mount, and clear stamps, which are the three types of stamps I will be going over in today's video. In today's video, I will also be using black dye ink. This was in my basic supply kit video, and it is going to be the best ink to use that will show you the best results of each stamp. So with that in mind, let's go ahead and get started on each type of stamp. The first type I want to talk about are wood mount stamps. Now this is probably what you think of when you think of rubber stamping. This is the more traditional type of stamp, and it's what I actually started out with. Now you can see here I have some Christmas stamps that I will be testing out and showing you. However, these come in a variety of shapes, sizes. You can get sentiments, you can get just about anything with wood mount stamps. Now, wood mount stamps do come with a wood mount block, hence the name. That means they're a little bit more bulky, however, they are a deeply etched red rubber. So you get the best image with these types of stamps. So to ink these up, I'm just going to go ahead and take my black ink pad. I'll flip my stamp over with the rubber side down, and then I can just tap it on the ink pad. You don't want to rub. You want to do like a slight tapping motion like you see here, and that's going to pick the ink up. It will make sure it's laying nicely on the stamp and it's not smeared on there, or you have any type of little lines in your stamping that you can get when you swipe your ink pad. Another way you can do it is you can lay your stamp on its back, pick up your ink pad and flip it over with the ink side down, and then you can just tap it onto your stamp. Then you just want to flip your stamp over, and with a firm pressure, press it right down onto your paper, lift straight up, and you should have a very nice stamped image. You can see with my stamp here what fine lines I really have in this image, and also the detail. That is going to be important later on when I talk about different types of stamps. This type of stamp, this red rubber, is really what you get the most detail with. However, each one comes with their pros and cons, and I'll talk about that in a second. Now you can see that my wood mount stamp set that I have here is actually a set of stamps. However, the majority of the time, unless you buy from Stampin' Up!, you really don't get a set of stamps. You get individual stamps for this. So you're buying each stamp individually. Now I will show you one more time how you ink these up. I tend to do it this way more often than not. I flip my stamp onto its back, I take my ink pad in my hand, and then I just pounce my ink pad onto the red rubber of the stamp. I go ahead and pick the stamp up, flip it over, and firmly press it down. Try not to drop it like I did. But there you have a very nice stamped image ready to be colored in and put on a card. Now off to the side as well, you see that little clamshell case that my stamps are stored in. Again, that is just a thing that Stampin' Up! Does. It's not normal that wood mount stamps come like this. Now, some of the cons for your wood mount stamps. So some of the cons for wood mount stamps, because you are paying for the wood, the actual mount that it sits on, it is a bit more expensive than other types of stamps that I'll talk about in this video. They also often do not come in sets like you see I have here. They often come individual. Stampin' Up! Is actually one of the only places I know of that you can get a wood mount stamp set, and you do pay a pretty good price tag for that set. Another pretty big con for me, because I work in a small space, they are very bulky and they take up a lot of storage space. So that's one of the reasons I preferably do not tend to go for the wood mount stamps. Now, some of the great things about wood mount stamps. They are red rubber stamps, so they stamp beautifully, and with that comes finer details. These wood mount stamps, you really get much finer details than you do with clear mount stamps. They also come with the mount already with them, so you don't need any extra tools other than your ink pad and your paper. So when you get these, all you have to do is mount the stamp onto the wood block and you're ready to go. You don't need any extra tools with these. Also, the red rubber provides a longer life for the stamps. It's not going to be much of a difference from your clear mount stamps. However, it is going to be a longer life if you handle them properly. And in my opinion, I think wood mount stamps are a little bit easier to handle. Sometimes your clear stamps you can't use certain cleaners on and that kind of thing. So I think they're a little bit easier to handle as well. I do want to show you a few final pictures of these wood mount stamps. Here you can see it on the ink pad and you can see just how really bulky these stamps are. But again, here's why I love them. You can see that fine detail of the stamp that you get and just how beautifully these stamps really do stamp out. Now the next type of stamp I'm going to be talking about are cling mount stamps. These are red rubber stamps, so you get that benefit of them. However, they don't come without a wood mount. They come with a cling backing on them, and you do need acrylic blocks like you see in this picture to be able to use them. Now you can buy acrylic blocks individually, or you can buy like a starter set of them as well. And the great thing about this is you only need to buy them once. You can keep reusing them over and over again. They never wear out and you'll have them pretty much forever. Now here you can see these cling stamps come in this CD case and they come in this little rectangle of rubber. Now when you first open the little container, there is this white backing paper on them, and that is to be peeled off. Now the back isn't going to be sticky at all to the touch. What it sticks to is it sticks to that clear acrylic block. And it will stick to the inside of your CD case as well, so these aren't going to fall out. It also comes with these little backing papers you can put on the back of the cling part, and they're supposed to cling to the acrylic blocks. However, I find leaving them off, they cling to my acrylic block better that way, so I don't even bother putting those on. Here you can see I've mounted one to my acrylic block. I can just pull that right off when I'm ready to switch to another stamp. Go ahead and pick up that stamp with my acrylic block and it's ready to be used. Now I keep that little rectangle of rubber and I just store my little stamps back in there. That way I know if I have them all back in the package, if I'm missing any, that type of thing really helps me out. But again, this little storage case and that rubber is kind of individual to Stampin' Up. It's kind of a hit or miss with your cling stamps if you do get that rubber back or that rubber rectangle around your stamps. Here is a side-by-side comparison, and you can see just how really big those wood block stamps are compared to your cling stamps, even on the acrylic block. Now, to ink these up, it depends on the size of these, how I ink them up. Sometimes I'll just take it to the stamp pad. Sometimes I'll flip it over and bring the stamp pad to it. However, these have kind of the middle ground of your clear stamps and your wood block stamps. You get the added bonus of them not being so bulky. However, you still get that great rubber stamp with great detail and really thin lines. One thing I do want to mention with your unmounted rubber stamps, you do want to make sure that when you buy these from certain companies that they do have the foam backing on them, the cling backing on them, because that is what makes these stamps stamp so wonderfully. You need that little bit of cushion to be able to really push these down into the paper. Now I'll go ahead and I just clean that stamp off. I use just baby wipes. Lawn Fawn has a stamp chamois now that's also really wonderful if you find yourself getting little bits of baby wipes stuck to your stamp. But you can see I can just go ahead and switch out these stamps easy as can be, and I have a different size acrylic block here that I'll use, and I can just go ahead and tap that stamp into the ink pad, and then I'll just give it a firm press right on the paper and stamp it down. And then once I'm done with that stamp, I can just wipe it off with my baby wipe or clean cloth, and I can just put it right back in its case in its little holder, and I know exactly where it is the next time I want to use it. Now another type of cling stamp that I want to talk about are background stamps. Here I have one. Again, this is from Stampin' Up, and it is their Corner Garden stamp, and this is small. for background stamps. This is a smaller one. The majority of the time when you buy a background stamp, it is going to be 6 inches across by 6 inches across, so a 6-inch square. It has the cling backing on it, so if you want to use an acrylic block to stamp it out, by all means do it. However, the majority of the time, this is what I do. I don't want to store a huge acrylic block, and unless I'm going to be using a positioner, which I won't even get into right now, this is the way I go about doing background stamps. I flip it over so the cling is on the back of my surface. I don't have anything underneath it. I take my ink pad in my hand and flip it over and make sure I give my stamp a good inking all the way across. So this is all inked up, ready to go. I take my piece of cardstock that I'm going to stamp on, lay it down on top of that stamp. I'll put a piece of scrap paper, this is just computer paper, right over the top, and I use my hand to press this down. Make sure you don't move that piece of paper underneath, and then once I have it firmly pressed down, I will lift straight up and away, and I've got a great stamp all ready to go and be colored in or put on a card base as so. And this just allows me to use background stamps without having such a huge block. So going on to some of the cons of your cling mount stamps. Now these need acrylic mounts to be able to use them. However, once you buy your acrylic mounts, you can use them for your lifetime. You don't need to, they're not disposable, so you can just keep reusing and reusing. However, it is an added purchase and an added expense at the beginning of your stamping, as you get into stamping. The second con is the cling on the back of these stamps can be temperamental. And what I mean by that is sometimes I have a hard time getting these types of cling mount stamps to stick to the acrylic block. Now sometimes all it needs is a good wash with some soap, mild soap and water. However, sometimes that doesn't help and you really have to fight with these things. The last con that I have for cling mount stamps are there aren't quite as many options as your wood mount stamps or your clear stamps. Now moving on to the pros of the cling mount stamps. These are kind of your middle ground between your wood mount and your clear, so you get the added benefit of the red rubber and all the detail you get and the great stamping quality you get with that. However, you don't have that wood block, so you have less bulk. They are also cheaper than your wood mount stamp because you don't have to pay for your wood block. You get them at a cheaper price point, but they're more expensive than your clear stamps. So again, we're at that middle ground with these stamps. Here's a final look at just how beautifully these stamps do stamp out onto your paper. And here's a last look at that background stamp. Again, these are normally larger than even what I have here, 6 by 6, but you get an idea. Now moving on to my final type of stamp. These are the stamps I use the most, and these are clear stamps. Again, you're going to need your acrylic blocks for these types of stamps because you need something to mount them onto. Now you can see here, these come in a CD case from Stampin' Up, but they come on these backing papers, and these are just plastic backing papers pretty much. The top will open up, and the majority of the time you do have all of your images printed on one side of the backing paper, so you can easily line them back up, and that's another great way to make sure that you have them all, because as you get more stamps it is easier to lose them a little bit. Now the majority of the time they don't come in this clear case. They come in just like a plastic wrapper. However, you can get storage cases for them, and you can also get what we call pocket pouches like type of things, and those are really great to store these in as well. One thing you want to make sure of when you buy your clear stamps, you want to make sure that they are made in the USA. More times than not, when they're not made in the USA, they don't stamp as well as the ones that are. So that's just something to look out for. There are tricks to getting them to stamp nicely when they're not made in the United States, but it's kind of easier just to buy the ones that are than having to go through all the trouble to prime them. So you can see I just do the same inking techniques with these as well as I do with all the other stamps. I mount them onto an acrylic block, and then I just tap them in the ink pad and stamp them onto my paper. Now, these will stain, these stamps. If they are high quality stamps and you're using a dye ink pad like I'm using here, it's going to stain your stamps, and there really isn't a great way around that. It doesn't affect the stamping quality at all. It is what it is with these. They stain, and that's just the way it is. They still stamp clear if you want to stamp in a Versamark ink. But with the dye ink, these will stain your stamps, but you want them to. That's the nature of the stamps. So here you can see with this larger stamp, I mounted it onto a large acrylic block. I went ahead and placed this acrylic block down, and I picked up my ink pad to ink this up. Now when I stamped that down, it didn't stamp that well, and this is one of the major pros in your clear stamps. I can just re-ink this stamp again with the same black ink pad. I'll flip it back over, and when you look straight through these stamps, you can line it right back up with the image you already stamped. I'll press it down and re-stamp it again, and when I lift this up the second time, I've got a perfectly stamped image that's ready to be colored in. And even though it didn't turn out the first time, I still have the option to come back in a second time and re-stamp over this to make this image work. So you really cut down on wasted paper with these type of stamps. Now when you're done using your stamp, you want to go ahead and use either a damp cloth, or I use a baby wipe the majority of the time, just to wipe down your stamp, and then you can store it back on that plastic backing that it comes on. And you can put it back in this case it will be the CD case, or you can put it in its little pouch and it's ready to be stored again. Now you can see here that sometimes they can be a little bit sticky, very sticky, and they want to stick to your acrylic black. Just take your time when removing them, as well as sometimes when you get your stamps in your package, the first time you take them off of that backing paper, just be a little bit more gentle with them, because you can rip these stamps if you tear them off that backing paper a little bit too hard. Now a few cons for these stamps I'll go ahead and get into now. One con of the clear stamps is that they're not as detailed as your red rubber stamps. They are not as sturdy as the red rubber, so they really don't hold up to detail quite as well. Also, another con, you can think of this as a con if you want, you need the acrylic mounting blocks to make these stamps work. But again, this is a one-time purchase. You purchase your blocks and you use them over and over and over. Also, your clear stamps can be a little bit more high maintenance than your red rubber stamps. You want to try to store them out of direct sunlight. You don't want to use certain types of cleaners. It's best just to stick with your baby wipes and your damp cloths to clean off your stamps. And if they ever get a little less sticky on the back, they will pick up glitter or embossing powder or just random junk that's on your desk. You want to go ahead and just throw those in a bowl of mild soapy water, and then let those air dry, and they'll be good to go, ready to stick down again. One last con that I didn't mention here is that these stamps by nature stink. And I don't mean they're awful to work with, I mean they literally stink. The photopolymer that they are made with is just a very smelly material. You know they're high quality because they do smell, but it is a con if you're sensitive to smells. But it does wear off after time. Now, some great things about clear stamps. They are much slimmer, they don't take as much counter space up, and they're much easier to store because of that. Now, another great thing, because of the material they are made with, they're at a cheaper price point. Your average clear set comes on a 4x6 inch backing sheet, and that can contain a variety of number of stamps. They can be large, they can be small, but the average price for a 4x6 stamp set is roughly $15 US. And when you compare that to wood mount stamps, the average wood mount set would probably cost you anywhere between $30 to $50. So it's a big price adjustment. Now, another great thing about clear stamps is they come in sets. So you're not getting just one stamp set for your dollar. You are getting a large stamp set with many stamps in it. So that is more bang for your buck. And the last thing and the greatest thing I think about clear stamps are because you can see through them, you get very easy placement with these. So you can do a number of techniques, you can restamp if needed, and you can get it in just the right spot on your card. So that's a big plus for me as well. Here's a few last pictures of the clear stamps. You can see just how thin these really are, and there's how well they stamp as well. So you lose some of your detail, but you gain a lot as well. Here's how well you can actually see through those clear stamps for very easy placement. So here's one last look at all the different stamp sets that I covered in this video. And here's one last look at the individual stamping results as well. Now I have a few more pictures of you. I wanted to give you some comparisons of these stamps. Here you can see them all mounted on either their wood block or their acrylic block, and you can see just the wide range that these stamps do take up. I also wanted to give you a comparison of the stamping results of these stamps. So you can see your wood stamp, you most definitely get the finest detail, but each stamp has their own pros and cons. You can choose to use them all. You can choose to just use one kind of stamp. I tend to lean more towards clear stamps because I don't have a lot of storage space. But if you have the storage space and you want to use wood stamps, go for it. Like I've repeated in this video, they all have their pros and cons. Now here is one last look at them unmounted. Obviously the wood mounted is not, because I can't unmount those, or you can, but I choose not to. But you can see just the large difference you get between the stamps. Now I wanted to give you a few basic care tips for your acrylic blocks if you choose to use them. In between using them, I like to just use baby wipes to spot clean them. You want to make sure that they're alcohol-free baby wipes if you can find them. I haven't had a problem with crazing, which is just tiny little cracks in your acrylic blocks, which are caused from alcohol in products. However, if you're worried about that, you'll want to get alcohol-free baby wipes. Now, if you're having trouble with your stamps sticking to your acrylic blocks, you'll want to clean the back of your stamp as well as giving your acrylic blocks a deep cleaning, because they do get built up with ink and just random gunk. Now, for a deeper cleaning, I choose to use alcohol wipes, but that you want to do at your own risk, because again, it can cause crazing in the acrylic blocks. So if you're worried about that, a few things I've read online, I haven't tried them myself. One is to put them in the dishwasher, so do that at your own risk as well, or you can just wash them with soapy water in your sink, and that won't harm your blocks at all. But I like to get mine really clean, so I use alcohol on them, and I haven't had any trouble with crazing as of yet. So what I would recommend for your starting stamps is a hard one to cover for me. Every card maker has their own style and has a certain type of card that they make more often than not. So you tend to lean towards those type of stamps. So for very beginner stampers, I would recommend starting out with an alphabet set, a sentiment set of stamps, a basic shape set, whether that be circle, rectangle, square, whatever you want, or you could get a set with all of them in it. And then after you've gotten those and you've kind of looked around at the galleries online, looked at cards online, I would recommend picking a style and then grabbing a set of those and seeing if it works for you. And if you are a seasoned stamper, for lack of a better term, watching this video and you have any recommendations for beginner stampers and their starting sets, please leave those in the comments below. For more information, you can head over to my blog, craftingwhilecaffeinated.wordpress.com. There is no supply list today, but if you have any questions or comments, you can leave them in the comment section below or over on my blog as well. Thanks so much for watching, and happy crafting.